Can you imagine two people getting married just for convenience, thinking that love isn't important to maintaining a relationship? Because it's the basis of any relationship that works, isn't it? Carly, the only daughter of a noble family that was losing everything, knew that the future of her home depended on a very important decision. Carly's father, Mr. Stephen, lost almost the entire family fortune gambling and making bad investments. Now, to save the house and the family from bankruptcy, the only way out was a marriage that would bring in money. And he didn't think twice, deciding that he would find a suitor for his daughter Carly. Carly was a beautiful young woman who had many plans ahead of her, but none of them included getting married, and certainly not against her will. When she heard about everything her father was planning to do to save the family finances, she was very worried that this might happen, but her father was already arranging for it to happen, and even had a suitor in mind so that she could get married. The person chosen by Carly's father was Mark. A very handsome young man, aspiring in the business world and the son of a very wealthy businessman friend who owned several companies. And he was the perfect suitor that Carly's father was looking for. Carly's father immediately invited the rich young man to visit his daughter. Carly didn't like the idea very much, but decided to accept in order to help her father. The next day, Mark arrived to meet Carly. He approached her with a determined look and a friendly smile, saying, "Hello, Miss Carly, I've come to meet you, and I can already tell you that I have a proposal that could help both of us." Mark also needed to marry for convenience because of the pressures of his family and his responsibilities for the future of the business. As the youngest son of a powerful businessman, he knew the expectations everyone had of him. Mark's family was counting on him to ensure that the company remained strong and the family maintained its social status. They wanted him to marry someone rich to make sure all this happened. In addition, Mark's grandfather left a will saying that his inheritance could only be used when Mark married and had a child. Thus, a marriage of convenience was seen as essential to ensure the well-being and social standing of both Mark and his family. Knowing that Carly's father had left her family in financial difficulties, Mark liked the idea that the two of them could marry for convenience to help them out. Convinced that Carly would agree to the idea, Mark went to meet her and explained why they needed to get married. However, he didn't mention that he would need to have a child with her. To convince her, he promised that he would get his father's finances back on track and help her family out of their difficult situation. After many weeks of family talks and decisions, the wedding between Carly and Mark was scheduled for the following month. While all the details were being arranged, Carly felt as if she was being led by fate, forced to go ahead with a marriage that wasn't for love, but for convenience. On the day of the ceremony, the sun set over the horizon, tinting the sky with shades of orange and red. In the garden of the mansion, an arch of flowers was carefully erected while the guests gathered to the sound of soft music and the sweet scent of roses. By candlelight, Carly and Mark exchanged their vows under the soft glow of the moon. Their hearts weren't entirely happy, but now the wedding was done. All the guests celebrated with great joy. For both of them, however, the sadness and sense of failure in love only increased with each passing moment. The party ended and the harsh reality began to set in. After the party, Carly and Mark left for their long-awaited honeymoon. Mark chose a remote property, a farm that his family owned, to spend the first few months together. It was important to distance themselves from people so that they wouldn't realize that the couple weren't really in love as they should be. When they arrived at the mansion, Carly asked them to sleep in separate rooms. Mark, unable to hide it any longer, explained that he needed to have a child with her because of his dead grandfather's demands. She said angrily, "What, Mark? You didn't tell me everything. Our agreement didn't say anything about having a child. What do you mean? I'm not going to be intimate with you," shouted Carly, very angry. Mark, despite having hidden it, was very sad when he realized how repulsed Carly was by him. "Can't you have any good feelings for me?" Carly left in a rage, going into the first room she found. After the servants had packed their things, Carly locked the door. It had been 2 months since the wedding, but the couple, even living under the same roof, seemed like strangers. Carly looked after the house, guided the servants, and tended the garden. And Mark, well, he'd been walking around the estate with an air of sadness ever since he'd seen the disappointment in Carly's eyes the night he'd had to tell her about his grandfather's will. Mark and Carly's families had known each other for a long time. He had known Carly since he was a teenager and had feelings for her ever since. You know those teenage crushes, don't you? But he had never had the chance to tell her about his feelings. When he heard that her family was having money problems and that she needed to get married to fulfill her grandfather's wishes, he thought of Carly. When he proposed marriage, he thought that, even if she didn't love him from the start, Carly might end up liking him over time, getting to know him better. As the days went by, Carly didn't have much to do in that huge mansion and lived far from the city without any attractions, but she heard from the staff that a big theater company was going to perform in the city next weekend. Even though she wasn't that familiar with Mark, she got excited and went up to him and said, "Shall we go and see the big show that's going to take place in the city? It's been a long time since I've been downtown and I'd like to go and get out for a while, but if you want, let's go, Carly," Mark replied. The theater was packed with people Carly didn't know, but they all knew Mark. He politely introduced her to everyone around and looked for seats so that they could settle down before the play started. Just then a very beautiful woman came up, took Mark's arm and said, "Dear Mark, it's been so long since I've seen you. How well you're doing, huh?" She said this and looked Mark up and down with a longing gaze. Carly, seeing the bold woman, squeezed Mark's arm. He was a little uncomfortable and replied to the woman, "Dear Sophie, it's true, it's been a long time since we've seen each other. Taking this opportunity, this is my wife Carly." Sophie looked at Carly with disdain and then turned to Mark, saying, "If you need me for anything, you know where to find me, darling." When she had finished speaking, she walked away and left without saying hello to Carly. Carly felt jealous and spent the rest of the show with a bored expression. When they got home, she demanded that Mark tell her who Sophie was and what they'd had together. She was an ex-girlfriend from the past, but "I don't understand why you're jealous. You treat me with contempt, you don't even let me near you, and now you're upset because an ex-girlfriend said hello?" "It's not jealousy," she replied. "It's a lack of respect on her part. She should respect me because I'm her wife." Mark retorted, "A wife only on paper, Carly. Not a real wife. It's been 2 months since we got married and we still haven't been intimate, we haven't lived as husband and wife. You're just a paper wife and nothing more. I have the right to go out and be with whoever I want, including Sophie." Hearing this, Carly left in a rage. She went to her room and thought, "He has no right to pay attention to that Sophie. Et doesn't. I bet he met her in a vulgar place. That's the stuff of classless women." Still angry, she went back into the living room to confront Mark some more. She found out from the servants that he wasn't at the mansion. When she entered his room, Carly was visibly shaken. "He's gone to visit that Sophie, for sure," he thought sadly. Suddenly, he realized that he was feeling a confused sense of lost love for Mark, something that had taken over his heart. "Why am I feeling like this? Our marriage was just a mutual agreement." Carly spent the whole night crying at what a failure her life had become. She had married for convenience, she didn't want to be intimate with her husband, and now she was discovering that she was also beginning to desire and like him. Early the next morning, Carly had her bags packed. She was leaving. She had thought that accepting an arranged marriage had been a mistake, and now she was making another mistake by allowing herself to fall in love with Mark. The best thing to do was to end it all. She was going to leave anyway, because she couldn't bear the thought of Mark experiencing moments of love and pleasure with Sophie. As Carly was leaving, Mark arrived in the living room. Seeing the suitcases on the floor, he asked, "Where are you going, Carly?" "I'm leaving." I don't want to get in the way of your love affair with Sophie, she replied. What? My love affair? What are you talking about? Shahi asked, confused. Do you think I don't know that you spent the night with her? Well, you can stay with your friend from the past, Sophie. I'm clearing the way for you, Carly said, with tears in her eyes. Mark was surprised by her reaction, because until that moment she had seemed to despise him. He smiled and said, wait, let me get this straight. So you want me, Carly? Is that right? Yes. You love me. If you didn't, you wouldn't be reacting like this. Silly me, I didn't spend the night with any woman. I spent the whole night in the stable because a mare had trouble giving birth and I helped the vet the whole time. If you don't believe me, you can ask the staff. Hearing all this, Carly felt ashamed of her hasty reaction. Seeing that she was embarrassed, Mark took her hand and said, You're Carly, even though our marriage happened because of an agreement between our families, I've liked you for a long time. When I found out that you needed financial help and I needed to find someone to marry, I couldn't think of anyone else but you. I waited patiently for 2 months, hoping that you would grow fond of me, and I wouldn't waste this opportunity to make you fall in love with me. At that moment, she approached him with determination and kissed him tenderly. She suggested, What if we continue this conversation in the bedroom? He smiled and agreed, That's an excellent idea. We have lots of things to talk about, darling. From that moment on, the marriage that began as a matter of convenience turned into true love and affection between them. Over time, their lives were filled with happy moments, and some time later their first child was born, the fruit of much love from that couple. The family was now happy and fulfilled, thus completing the circle of love that began with a simple union of convenience. Did you like this love story that began as a matter of convenience and turned into something beautiful? Enjoy and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow more beautiful stories of love and passion like this one. Click on the playlist that will appear on the final screens and enjoy. Thanks for watching and see you next time.